This is the 11th episode of Sheep Stuff You Should Know with Dan Macon and Ryan Mahoney, and we're joined today with Dick Emigh. He is my mentor, founder of Emigh Livestock, third generation sheep rancher, and just a legend of the industry, and I'm excited to sit down and talk to him a little bit. So just to jump right in, we'll just start asking you questions and you can get going. And so how'd you start? And give a little history on who you are and how'd you start and where you grew up and that.
Okay, well, I grew up and was born and raised in Rio Vista, California. And I guess the question is, how did I get started in the sheep business? When I got out of the Army, came back to the ranch, and my dad had a little land and that he farmed, and my brother was there. And so I showed up, and my sister was married and gone by that time. And so anyway, we tried a couple of things that didn't work out. And then I ventured off into the livestock, all sheep, 100% sheep. And my brother took the farming. And probably another mentor or reason that I went into the sheep business was one of my uncles, my dad's brothers. He was in the sheep business. So I'd go help him a little bit once in a while, shearing and moving sheep around. And so I thought that was pretty cool to be in the sheep. And so that's kind of the kickoff where we started.
Do you have, you went to UC Davis, right?
Yeah.
And what did you major in when you were there?
What did I major in? Ag, what did they call it? It was ag, but it was a 2-year program, and it was an
ag business,
ag husbandry program, or something like that.
And there was quite a few from Rio Vista that were in that.
Oh, yes.
Group with you?
Yes. I was in the 2-year program. Most of the kids from Rio Vista were in a 4-year program. I was drafted in the Army in my second year up there. And then I never went back. Just came back to the ranch. And
but growing up, kind of the culture always drove you to the ranch. That was.
Oh, yes. Oh, I didn't know nothing else. I got to clean the chicken house and milk the cows twice a day, and thought I was a football player in high school.
Yeah. There, you even did a stint on the Rio Vista 49ers, didn't you?
Yeah, that's what always said.
Yeah.
He was the water boy.
Did you ever think about leaving the ranch or doing something other than ranching, Dick? Or was that always kind of what you were aimed at?
No, that's I was always just kind of geared for that. Especially then, it was ranch only. I did think, again, just a story. I thought many times that I was probably doing the wrong thing, staying on the ranch, trying to be in the sheep business and grow the sheep business larger, that I should get out of the state, because all the larger operations were in Eastern Oregon, Idaho, Utah, Nevada. And my reason is that the best livestock business don't have a lot of sheep around, a lot of people around. The sheep and cattle don't go with people, especially the range operations. Anyway, then that other things developed little by little, one thing at a time, 1 year at a time. And then pretty soon it was obvious that that's where we're going to stay, is in California and Solano County. And that's where we are.
What drew you to sheep as opposed to cattle? Why did you, just your experience working with them, or why did you stay with sheep?
Oh, I'm not sure of my answer, but the reason it was, see, it's changed drastically now. So this probably wouldn't make any sense, but because of my uncle, and he had some land that we acquired, either leased or purchased. And then at that time, we started an irrigated pasture venture up near Dixon. And the sheep industry was drawn to Solano County. We had, what did we have? I think we had 5 packing houses in Solano County at one time.
Wow.
And probably 10 in San Francisco and probably 20 in Los Angeles. And yet Solano County was a big draw because of the irrigated pasture and all these sheep which were, the numbers were big. I won't try to tie numbers to it, but anyway, the numbers were big that they didn't have any feed when they ran out of the winter rains. There was nothing to do with them. Either put them in a feedlot, which was non-existent then, or find pasture. Well, just happened to have 50,000 acres of ground up by Dixon that was starting to be irrigated to raise irrigated pasture, and that's where they went. Wow. And so that's probably what drew me or kept me into it.
What kinds of principles or I guess ideas really guided your business decisions, Dick? What things did you consider to be most important when you made a decision like that?
Oh, I don't know. If I understand your question, are you talking adults that I look to?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
The 3 of the people that I look to, even though I didn't have a direct association, I had some association with them. One was Harvey McDougall. He worked he built a first-class organization down at Collinsville there. And I knew him because he worked with the kids in the 4-H and FFA. And then another one was Henry Peters. I didn't know him as well as I did Mr. McDougall, but he was the head mogo in the range sheep business. I would question my numbers, but he probably had 20, maybe 30,000 sheep.
Wow.
Because he had land everywhere in Yolo County, in Solano County, and towards the coast and other places that I didn't know about. And land was cheap, and he liked land, and he liked the sheep. And of course, labor was available. And so when I became acquainted with him, just like Harvey McDougall, that's the guy that I wanted to be. So and then there was one other one. Peter Cook here in Rio Vista. He took the business from his parents, and where he was not principally ag, he was a good person in the community. He did a lot for the community. And so anyway, I looked to those 3 to see if that isn't where I would be one day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of to bounce on one question, it sounds like Harvey McDougall impressed you with his ability to build an organization.
Right.
And then Henry Peters built a operation, or built a estate, so to say.
Correct.
And then Peter Cook took that estate and operation and translated it into kind of how you relate into your community after you've been blessed with success through hard work and those things. So those are kind of the three traits of each of those guys that impressed you.
Right. You're very, very good. Very well fed.
That's neat.
So what's the best year you ever had in the sheep business?
Oh.
And why was it good?
Every year I talk to several people, and this one guy up on the coast, really nice guy. He was in Cal Wool. He says, he says, they tell me that I got lots of money. He says, I've been in this business all my life. I said, I took my parents, and he says, all I see is work. I never see no money. But I thought that was always a good statement. And that is what it is in agriculture, because you acquire land and livestock, but you don't build a bank and stack your money up there. And as far as the best years, oh my, the best, I don't know. I'd have to think about that for a while, but the best years would have been between 80 and 2000, right in there. Yeah, that's when the irrigated pasture and the packing houses were working. All the infrastructure in the industry was working. Mm-hmm. You had transportation, and you had these packing houses, and you had lots of sheep. Yeah. And the fun thing I like to talk about is, you have to have something to sell. You can't go out and advertise, boy, you got the best lamb in the country, but I only got 6 of them. Next week we won't have any. And that's what I've seen, in later years. That I'm just amazed at the way the numbers have declined. Yeah. And we've done pretty good with the declining industry, but tougher all the time. Yeah. Right now is one of those times.
Yep, very definitely. Ask one more question and then turn it back over to Ryan. What's the best sheep country you've ever seen? What makes a piece of country good for sheep, and what's some of the prettiest sheep country you've been on?
Oh, I don't know the detail, but the best sheep country that I've ever seen is Idaho. Idaho is sheep country. And it's just, I kind of been out of it too long now, but when I used to go up there all the time, it's just amazing, the band after band after band of sheep they would run up there on those mountains. And all you have to do is look at the sheep, and you can tell it's good sheep country.
Yeah.
Just amazing. I see. I just seen, band after band of yearlings trailing up there, and they just, they just shine. It's just beautiful.
I get to go up to Idaho in about 2 weeks, and now I'm looking even more forward to it. Yeah, look at it through your eyes, Dick.
And you'll find. I think you'll find that that's. You get more gain up there, and you finish your lambs up there. Now, when you go to Utah, it's just almost as good as Idaho, but they don't have the volume. Mm-hmm. In other words, the lambs will weigh, this is broad brush, but the lambs will weigh 110 in Utah, and they'll weigh 125 in Idaho.
Wow.
And yeah. really something.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, it's such an amazing country with the Snake River going through and the changes in elevations in
Right.
such a short amount of time, and then being a little higher and higher up in the world.
Yeah.
Those sheep up there are amazing.
Yeah,
Strong feed.
I don't know enough detail, but Sun Valley,
Yeah.
summertime's got millions of sheep.
And now it's all millions of dollars of people.
Yeah, they forgot the sheep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So growing up, what was some of your favorite things you liked doing on the farm? Like during different seasons you enjoyed, or what?
Oh, you mean with the sheep?
Like the work of the sheep. So the lambing or the weaning or the shearing or the what cutting stickers. I know that's not your favorite, but what part was kind of your favorite part of the sheep, or that you always?
That's without a question. The lambing time was the best working time of the year, because that's where you make your crop.
Yeah.
And so that was favorite. And then the other time, which was always favorite to me, because we had the irrigated pasture, we would wean and go to the irrigated pasture, and that's a favorite time because you get to see the work there. That how in the mountain countries they run in bands, and every herder trying to make the best bunch. But we have somewhat the same thing there when we ran lots of sheep. The different guys and different ranches. Our ranches were fenced, but the different ranches and the different ages to wean those lambs and see what they are and how good or how bad they are. And that's the best time of the year in the sheep business.
Did you when you do those weans and then you'd see their performance on the different ranches and the different guys, I would assume then you would make management decisions for the following year based on those numbers, be it personnel decisions or, stocking a ranch differently based on what you've seen?
Stocking the ranch maybe, but no. What your term was there would fit the mountains.
Yeah.
Where the guy stays with the sheep all the time, and then you might put a different guy or different band, different direction, but not for us, because our having the fence and the farming, it always changes.
Yeah.
This is always been fascinated by this kind of questions. They're hard to answer, but that's why they're fun to ask. But what are some of you're 91 in August, and over the years you've seen a ton of changes in technology, and there's always an urge, I think definitely I have it, and a lot of my generation does, is to replace traditions with technology. And I'm curious what your thoughts are. What are some of those kind of sheep herder traditions or animal husbandry things that can never be replaced with technology? So those traditions or those principles that don't change no matter what happens in the real world.
Well, that's easy to answer, hard to explain. What you can't replace with technology is, the way I explain it, is a sheepherder, a real sheepherder that has been with the sheep all his life, worked with the sheep. He is the top of the class in the environmentalists. It's just amazing how those people know the land, the climate, and everything that goes with living outdoors. And I was fortunate. I had this one person work for me, Esteban Gonzalez, And I learned all this from him because he was what I'm trying to describe, the best of the best in getting the most out of the feed and the most into the sheep. And he would do this. I still question this, but it's a fact. I know it. I saw it. He worked for me for 20 years or more. And but he could recognize in lambing time, we'd have 1,000 sheep around the ranch there. He could recognize every one of them like you and I would recognize a human being. Absolute. I couldn't believe it. I'll show you what happened. I went down there where he was working and bought some sheep from his boss. He was at Tracy. And so I brought him up and put him in my sheep. I don't know what I had, 2 or 4 or 5,000 sheep then. And put him in there. And then a year or two later, he came to work for me. And so at lambing time, he says, I wonder where those sheep went. There's one right there for you. Picked that up 2 years ago down there. and that's the kind of thing that fits your question.
Yeah.
Unbelievably. Those people are, somebody might say, oh, that dumb sheep herder don't know nothing. Well, he is so much smarter than the average person. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it's about maintaining that, getting the most out of your feed, but it's a year after year after year.
Yeah.
Which really gets to your point about environmentalists. Like it's an animal health tied to a pasture health that just continues to build on itself. Rather, it's not a harvesting; it's a continual
learning.
Yeah.
process.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, it is, and and you can't capture that.
Yeah.
Absolutely impossible, because those people do not exist now.
Yeah.
They aren't trained anymore. Now there are some in Peru that have that training, but there used to be abundance of them. Now there's just a few spots that you can find.
What about when did you make the decision to start incorporating cattle with the sheep, and what was the driver on that?
It was a very good move, excellent decision, and the driver was there's too much labor in the sheep and less labor in the cattle. And the main thing that wasn't even in the formula when we did it was when we put the cattle in with the sheep, is we improved the pasture. I didn't know what was going to happen. I thought we were going to take feed away. We added feed. And the reason for it is the old pastures were getting older every year, and if we didn't plow them, farm them, they just got older and older and older. And the sheep are very selective, and they'd eat the good stuff out and they'd leave the others. So the only help you got is if you burned it off or plow it. Okay, it didn't get neither. And so then we put the cattle in there, and it made feed. It increased the volume of feed, and the quality went from 0 to 100. It was.
Did you see a difference in your sheep performance once you added cattle?
Oh,
gain,
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, and there's many ways to say it. See, we run the same number of sheep, and the cattle were free, or turn it around.
Right.
You run the cattle, and here, whoa, you didn't have the cattle before, but you put the cattle now. Here's this. You get the sheep are free, the pounds, and
yeah.
And, we never weighed it, measured the fields and weighed the pounds of livestock. We didn't do that, but it was very easy because, it just showed. It just, I can't believe it how, because it's just like burning it off. You take that feed down and you need to do it. You need to take that feed right down to the ground. Not every year, but take it down to the ground, and then 3 or 4 years later, let it gain a little every year, and your feed is much better. And then I'll say 4 years, take it down again. Let the cattle clean it. There's times when our cattle are too fat. They don't need feed. They just need something to keep their belly full. And that's that really worked.
That's really interesting to me. And it would seem to me like it would work if you had cattle now. It would help to add sheep, right? That it's kind of both parts of that equation.
Of course, we're running sheep, but the honest thing is the sheep take too much labor today. One place that increases your labor, very difficult or expensive, whatever you want to call it, is the foot rot.
Right.
We've never been able to be without foot rot. We've helped it, and we've doctored it, and we've trimmed them, and it just adds to your too much labor, which makes it a bad thing.
Yeah.
And,
so I want to shift gears here for just a second. I want to know what the best lamb meal you've ever eaten was and where it was. What's the best lamb you've ever had?
oh, well, get in a lot of trouble with all my neighbors north. Because all of my neighbors will tell you that the best lamb that they ever ate was a little bigger.
Yep.
Now, the best lamb that I think, looking back in my lifetime, best lamb, we used to have a big discussion, big advertisement on San Joaquin spring lamb. That was Bakersfield to Stockton.
Mm-hmm.
That was the best lamb. Then we had almost the same lamb from Stockton to Red Bluff. Not very much difference. A little bit different in the terrain, a few differences, but they were pretty much the same. But the best lamb, I think, was 100-pound milk lamb right off the ewe. Take them out of the field and send them to the butcher and put them on the plate. I think that's the best lamb there is. Yep.
Yeah, there's nothing better for me that when you get to go to the mountains and ship lambs and they have those big barbecues and they pull that 105-pound lamb milk fat and they barbecue it up and you get to spend all afternoon eating. There's just nothing that beats that flavor.
Yep.
Yeah.
And boy, there was for a number of years there was real hostility in the industry as to, oh no, these mountain lambs are the best, in the San Joaquin Valley, those Vascos, oh, they were excited. Yeah.
Well, over the years, who was one of your favorite lamb buyers? Doesn't mean you did a lot of business with them, but who was the best one to talk to? And I don't know if you have any stories that go with that crazy eclectic group of characters that made up the history of lamb buyers.
Yeah, I couldn't come up with a list, but the best, the most active one to follow the decline in the industry would have been Leo Gallagher. He worked his way all the way through it, and was really when I say a good man, a good character, He might have had a Pepsi or two once in a while. But Leo Gallagher, because and the other reason I say him, he worked Imperial Valley, San Joaquin Valley, Mountain States, Northern California. He was from Woodland. So he was one of the most active, but each area had several people. And what they did, they had a clientele of growers that would stay with them, and then they would market their land. And we had a man by the name of Coffee. He's gone now, of course, and he lived over in Stockton, and he would just work in the spring a little around down the San Joaquin Valley, and then he worked mostly the irrigated pasture up there. He didn't work the industry like Leo did.
So I was on the phone with Tim yesterday.
Oh yeah.
And he mentioned a story about you used to work with Leo all the time buying ewes.
Yeah.
And he said after Leo passed away, Tim said, "Well, I guess you're gonna work with me on some of these deals." And so you called him up and had a set of ewes, and he put the deal together and ended up delivering all of these. You told him I'll buy them for $90 or whatever it was, and they closed the deal. And he said after you guys closed the deal, you had called him 4 or 5 times in like the next 12 hours asking him, "Well, why did we get those so cheap? Why did we get those? Why did we get those? Are you sure? Is there something wrong?" And so Tim went and asked his mom, did Dick do this to Leo? And he's like, "Nope, not at all. It's just you. You're young. You don't know."
I didn't get in on that story.
No, this is the backside of that story. But yeah. And after that, a lot of ewes traded with Tim. But I thought that was a funny story.
Oh yeah, I've done a lot of business with Tim. Yeah.
So next question's yours, Dan.
So what's been the biggest change in our industry or in California even over the course of your career, Dick? What's been the most dramatic thing that's changed?
I don't know if I understood
The
that.
most dramatic change in the industry over your career. What's the
biggest change?
Biggest change, most.
Oh. I'd have to sort that out, but probably the biggest change, one of the biggest changes was I don't know what years it would be, but anyway, we used to have equal numbers in the San Joaquin Valley as in the Sacramento Valley. Now, San Joaquin Valley is larger, so there was more sheep, more land, and Sacramento Valley was smaller and more farming, so they had less sheep. But anyway, there was a time there as the industry declined, all those sheep left Sacramento Valley. Now, when I say all, over 80%. They're probably down to 95% now, but just boom, just in 2 years, 2-3 years, boom, they all left. The coast, the same thing. There used to be just hundreds and thousands of lambs over on the coast. Boom, they just disappeared, just left. And so I'm sorry that I can't put the years, the time on it, but that was what I'd call the most dramatic.
What drove that change? Why'd all those sheep disappear?
I would say the market and the people or the younger generations, they don't want to have nothing to do with it. And of course, there's an option there when you look at what I said. See, the Sacramento Valley, they had lots of options there.
Right.
And when, it's odd, but when when money was really tight, boy, those sheep were the number one thing. They did. They brought money into the farm, the household. They held it together.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we fast forward a few years to the time we're talking about. The old timers wanted the sheep, but the younger generations, they didn't want the farm, and they sure didn't want the sheep.
Yeah.
And there it goes. And of course the decline, and all the moving parts is what makes it happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Was there any, when that transition was happening, was there kind of indications leading up to it, and then it happened over, if you were astute and paying attention to economic conditions, could you see it coming? And then when it happened, it wasn't a surprise, or did it just hit the industry and surprise everybody and just woke up one day and where are all the sheep?
Yeah, no, they knew it was coming.
Yeah.
They did it to themselves. They knew, and it's like, it's like a lot of agriculture. Too much work, or when I say too much work, not the labor that they were used to hiring. That's two statements saying the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
You're hiring these people to come and work on your ranch for 3 or 4 months in the winter, lambing these sheep, and then pretty soon they're less and less available. Well, then you get somebody else, and they aren't capable, and it just doesn't work. So anyway, that was one thing, and they then economics folded into it.
Yeah. Well, Kelly and Michaela want to stop by and say hi.
Oh, okay.
I got a sign on the door. Stay away. Dan, how are we doing on time? I don't have my watch with me. Are we
I think
at 3 o'clock?
We're right at 3 o'clock. Right at 3 o'clock. Yep.
Perfect. So you got one more question, or?
I do, and I'm actually going to depart from my question just a little bit because I'm really curious about this, Dick. When you walk in a pen of yearling ewes, what are you looking for? What makes a good one? What makes you look at a group of sheep and say, those sheep are going to do well in my operation?
Oh my! What's the sheep we've been getting from up there?
Cunningham?
Cunningham.
Yeah.
Well, the answer to that, the simple answer for me is Cunningham sheep breeding. Oh, they are way above the ordinary sheep. And it's just a breeding program that make them better sheep. They're better mothers. They're better foragers. They have better wool. They just, everything that you want in a sheep is in the Cunningham sheep breeding.
So it's more than just their physical appearance, then, isn't it? It's behavior and ability. And
absolutely, yeah. Now the other thing that I assume that you were thinking about when you asked the question, in Solano County, we can get too fine. The Solano County is not I don't call it a coast county, but it's not a desert.
Right.
Little fog, sometimes a lot of fog in the wintertime. Not a lot of rain, but some years we get up 20 inches. And so if you get too fine a wool breeding, your sheep aren't going to do good. They aren't going to last as long, and you want a coarser wool, but the fine wool sheep is always stronger. So you're torn between those two ventures. But I was I'm very serious about the Cunningham sheep breeding program. I'm all over, you can tell, I've been all over the West here, seen a lot of sheep, but they stand out. They stand way up on their own. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
How, this is not on here. I just asked one more side question because I thought of it, but how has marketing your lambs changed from when you started and packing plants and buyers on every corner to today over the years? How did you always try to tie into one outfit, or I mean, how did your marketing plan change over the years?
It didn't. My marketing plan didn't change very much, and the reason I say that, I gotta back it up with a little story. When we started this interview, I mentioned Harvey McDougall. Well, I went down to the ranch. Somebody else was with me. I forget who it was. Anyway, went down to his ranch and cornered him for a little of his time and asked him that question. How do I market these sheep? Because, you know, there didn't appear to be any right way to do it. And so I like to tell the story because he was 100% right. And he told me, just do the best job you can and then find a packing house or people that you can work with and work with. And it's proved out over the years in the sheep business, that's the way to do it. We don't have any futures program. We don't have any other way to market it. And so that made sense to me. And after working for years at it, he was 100% right.
So a lot of that gets back to focus on your operation, your expenses, and work with your seller. Don't spend all your time working on your seller and neglecting the expenses.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And the relationship is important too, right?
Yes.
Yeah. That's manifest itself this year.
Absolutely.
The COVID and the different plants shutting down, those good relationships are important.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, I guess the wrap-up question is kind of, what would you tell a young guy wanting to get into the sheep business? But then I changed that because I kind of anticipate your answer a little, and I changed it to the ranching business, so it could include cattle.
Oh yeah, there's no question about it. Yeah, I think, Ryan, that we've gotten into a personal corner.
Yeah.
But no, I'll just answer it the way it has to be answered. If a young guy said he was going to get into the sheep business, absolutely not, because he has no market and he has no industry. See, if I said, oh, we don't have any market, but you had a strong industry, then the first answer would be wrong. But if I can explain this, I went to a meeting one time way back early on when I was just starting, pork producers. It was a Farm Bureau livestock meeting. And I went, how I did it, I don't know, but I went to the pork session and they were done. They were in worse shape than the sheep industry. But they got it turned around, worked around, and they build it up. Well, I don't think there's an upside to the sheep industry because you might do this on a, how do I say this? You might do it on a small scale, backyard flocks, but your volume, which the industry is based on, is gone. There is no way that it can survive, and there again, because of your technology, it just won't, it just won't work. If you could start over, which the pork people did, then maybe you make it. But as we have it, what we need is we need a packing house in every county to kill the few lambs that we have, and we need to get rid of the corn feedlot project, and we need to produce that 100-pound lamb. And of course, we got to get $400 for them. And that's not going to happen in the structure we have. Yeah. So I don't know what kind of an answer that is, but that's
honest. That's what we want. That's all this whole thing's about.
Absolutely. And I guess just a real quick follow-up question for you. We've seen a lot of sheep being out grazing in the Oakland Hills and in places that don't want to burn up. Do you think that's a way for our industry to shift from a product to a service? Is there any opportunity in that kind of approach in our industry?
Absolutely. You bet. Yep. I can see that working. I'm not sure that because I see it working so well with the goats, I think it should work with the sheep, but I'm not sure. The goats do a better job of foraging that rough stuff than the sheep. But that's what I'm saying when I say start over again.
Right.
Get into that kind of business.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's where your money's going to come from. It's not, you're still going to get $100, $200 for your lamb, but you're going to have to generate some revenue some other way.
Yeah. Well, gosh, what a great, thank you, Mr. Emigh. This has made my whole week to get to visit with you.
Okay, well, I'm glad
Learned so much.
to do it, and hope we can keep the sheep industry going.
So do I. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I thank you very much, and yeah, I can't say nothing other than thank you.
Okay.
But
it's a great day, and I can't wait to listen back to this. I think I'll continue to learn from what you told us every time I listen to it. So thanks.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. And this is the sheep stuff you should know. For anybody that watched on Instagram, if there are questions, I'll go over them later and try to message back and answer any questions. But thank you, Dan. Thank you, Grandpa. I appreciate it. And yeah, this is a wrap.